lesson, I will describe projective design tools used in envisioning processes, such as visions and scenarios. Based on these tools, I will expose the agency of projective design in inclusive urban transformations. To understand the role of envisioning, we begin with the statement that the reality of the city is complex and uncertain. There is no fixed future. Because of this urban condition, how we think about the city and approach its transformation also needs to reflect this complexity. Uncertainty comes in the form of processes that are not reflected in land use, nor can be fixed by master planning. Rather, this uncertainty in the condition of the city requires alternative frameworks to deal with its future. For this reason, the main focus of urban design has shifted from concentrating on end states to focusing on processes. This holds an underlying premise of tools that are adaptive to change and transformation, and that include multiple perspectives. We can therefore ask ourselves, which are the design tools dealing with urban futures in conditions of uncertainty? As van der Helm has noted, envisioning is a common approach for making claims about and for the future. In the context of designing future transformations, it is important to understand the differences between forecasting and envisioning. Wachs underlines that a technical forecast built on elaborate databases and mathematical models is very different from a vision or scenario to be fulfilled by a bold action. He notes that forecasts provide dry, technocratic images that hardly have the power to motivate commitment. Envisioning tools, by contrast, support a systematic method for thinking creatively about dynamic, complex, and uncertain futures, and identifying strategies to prepare for a range of possible outcomes. Let's now look at envisioning in more detail. Envisioning is a process that enables a shared vision of the future to emerge through creative acts of imaging and discerning. Its major disciplines, as noted by Ziegler, are the discerning of concerns and deep, non-judgmental listening. The same author also describes 5 principal concepts linked to envisioning, of which we will explore the 3 most relevant ones for reflecting on the future and on collective learning. Firstly, it is important to understand that the future is a metaphor of the human imagination. The future does not exist out there objectively, but it is mobilized as a way to foster creative imaging. Secondly, the future is a domain of action and not only of knowledge. Participants in an envisioning process are thus compelled to produce images of the future in relation to concrete action settings, so that acting in the present can actually bring about the future that is being imagined. Thirdly, a future-oriented envisioning process fosters collective learning. This also means participants form themselves into a community of learners, which implies, first and foremost, that there is a readiness to search for a shared vision. But how is envisioning enacted? We will look at specific tools to understand this: visions and scenarios. They deal with desirable and possible futures, respectively. This makes them, again, different from forecasts, which provide images of probable futures. Because of their focus on desirable futures, visions are also equated with normative scenarios. These are in contrast with exploratory descriptive scenarios developed to achieve possible and plausible futures. However, the 2 terms are sometimes used interchangeably, and in the rest of this lesson, the term scenario is used as an all-encompassing term. According to Paola Pellegrini, scenarios help define what is actually possible by linking images to the actors, stakeholders, and interest groups, influencing the transformation of a particular city and/or territory. Various participants are therefore included. Scenarios usually work within the structure of a broader thinking process on urban transformations. The current state of affairs is their starting point. They start from what is recognized as objective by various participants in the present, and are thus reliant on different kinds of information. To harness the imagination and connect the present with the future, scenarios isolate certain phenomena concerning urban transformation and look into what would happen if such phenomena would be taken to their extreme consequences. They are usually expressed by a what if question. For example, what if the skills of asylum seekers and related migration considerations were incorporated in the design of key urban services and infrastructure? I conclude this lesson by making 3 final important considerations for action learning frameworks that engage in envisioning processes with specific attention to marginalized communities. Firstly, since images are crucial for reestablishing a connection with the future in spite of urban complexity and uncertainty, visualization is a key component of image creation. It holds an important capacity to synthesize and juxtapose various imaginations about the future. Visualization also has to do with selecting and articulating the multiple images which have defined the identity of cities and territories, and for this reason have provoked debate over a very long history. Through this selection, visualization can include representations of historically excluded voices. Through its articulation, visualization can produce representations readable to all. Secondly, visualizing supports co-production, rooted in the coming together of different stakeholders and interest groups. If a number of different voices are included in the construction of urban futures, collective learning and inclusive decision-making can be achieved. As Ziegler notes, in this context, urban practitioners can become advocates of the least powerful voices when it comes to the allocation of societal resources and urban welfare. Thirdly, co-production generates images of the future which are partially incompatible. This partial antagonism is significant because it supports a process of choice. As noted by Bernardo Secchi, choice among antagonistic images that are produced by subjects driven by the imaginary is the only concretely practicable ground to construct a coherent urban and territorial policy.